You are now listening to a podcast made in collaboration with the Copenhagen College Radio.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 77 of the Social Media and Politics podcast, bringing you expert insights into how social media is changing the political game. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, political scientist at the University of Copenhagen. Connect with the show on Twitter by following us at SMNP Podcast, or swing over to our Facebook page, Social Media and Politics Podcast. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget about that Facebook page. I've been putting a couple lectures I've been giving up on there, and they're also available on YouTube. I'll put a link in the show notes to a little YouTube channel I've been building with some presentations about social media virality, political participation. So as I sort of give those over the next couple of months, I will be archiving them there. So check those out. They might be a good resource for you. Apropos, today's episode is a super interesting and timely look into the Ukrainian presidential elections. So we've had elections recently in Israel, they're coming up in India and also in the EU. But on April 21st, there is going to be a presidential election in Ukraine between Petro Poroshenko, the current president who's been installed after the Euromaidan revolution we talked about in episode 71, and Volodymyr Zelensky, who is a comedian and an actor with no prior political experience, but who is currently projected to win the Ukrainian presidential elections in a landslide. And current opinion polls have Mr. Zelensky leading in almost every age range in every part of the country. So my guest today is Mikhail Fedorov. He is the social media strategist for Mr. Zelensky, and we're going to talk about the environment around the campaign and what sort of social media marketing tactics the Zelensky campaign is using across different platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Telegram. It's all in here, and it's a super fascinating look at what's going on right now in the campaign. And as Mikhail will describe it in the interview, this is a campaign filled with dirty tricks, bots. The New York Times reported that Russians were buying accounts from Ukrainians in order to flood the Facebook sphere with different types of content. There's been cyber attacks on Mr. Zelensky's website. So we're going to get into all of these things, use of paid advertising, really just a jam-packed interview. Now, just to give a bit of a heads up, this is a first for the podcast in that the interview was done through an interpreter. So the voice you're going to be hearing most of the time is actually Dimitri's, the interpreter. And I'm asking questions to Mikhail, and then Dmitry is talking about what Mikhail is saying kind of in the third person. So the pronouns are a bit weird, but that's the way that we had to do it. Now, before I cut to the interview, I want to talk a little bit about the context of the campaign. I know a lot of the listeners may not be familiar with what's going on in the Ukrainian elections, but it's a really, really fascinating campaign to watch because what you have is Volodymyr Zelensky, who's the clear front runner. And like I said, he has no prior political experience, but he plays the Ukrainian president on a show called Servant of the People, which is a wildly popular sitcom in Ukraine, launched in 2015. So what you have is a comedian who plays the president on TV, actually poised to now become the president. Now, there's a bit of controversy around the owner of the television station that shows Servant of the People. And that's because that person is an oligarch who has ties to Russia. So the opponents of Mr. Zelensky are trying to play up that connection between Mr. Zelensky, his show, and the operator of the channel that it is aired on, even though Mr. Zelensky says that the show is simply sold sort of on the market. So the sitting president, Petro Poroshenko, is trying to play up these ties and running a really aggressive campaign, basically putting the option between Poroshenko or Putin. And a picture of the two staring each other down is plastered on billboards all over Ukraine. Now, Petro Poroshenko, as the president of Ukraine, has put in a number of reforms that look to the West and the EU, which is something you might expect that he was put in power after the Euromaidan revolution. But these reforms are slow, and the Ukrainian population is dissatisfied with Poroshenko's performance. A lot of them don't feel like he's done enough for corruption, so they're willing to put in a complete outsider to clear the deck, and we'll see where that goes. It's a super interesting race to watch, and one thing that's interesting is that Mr. Zelensky, having built up a large social media following through his celebrity, has sort of leveraged that into the political sphere. And we're going to talk about that in this episode as well. But just a last bit of context here before we launch into it is Mr. Zelensky has been criticized for not offering many policy proposals about what he will do once in office. And if you look at his Instagram account or his Facebook account, it's a lot of videos of him sort of doing everyday things like chin-ups in the park or swimming in a pool. And that may be creating a sort of sense of authenticity that is also maybe reflected in his television sitcom, which shows him as a president, but also one that makes mistakes and is sort of very human. So the criticism is basically that there is not a lot of policy that's been communicated about his direction. And here's what he had to say to a Vice News reporter about his preparedness to be president.
So you feel like you're fully prepared to be president of Ukraine?
Да.
It's going to be fun.
Why not?
So we'll see how it all goes down, but this is a very interesting look, I think, into what's happening in the campaign right now in the heat of the second round of the election with the final vote happening on April 21st. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Mikhail Fedorov. He is the chief digital strategist for Volodymyr Zelensky. Mikhail, thanks for taking the time out. Welcome to the Social Media and Politics podcast.
Да, спасибо за приглашение большое.
And thank you for the invitation.
So I'd like to start out with a bit about your background. What's your experience in digital, and how did you get involved working for Mr. Zelensky's campaign?
У меня не было до этого никогда политического.
So previously to working with Mr. Zelensky, he didn't have any experience in working in political digital sphere. So right now he has an SMM studio, which works with Facebook and Instagram, which are two of the biggest platforms.
Cool. I wanted to ask, now that you're in the second round of the election, what's the atmosphere like in the office, and what kind of work are you doing from day to day?
Сильно изменилась ситуация.
So after the first round of the election, everything changed significantly. So currently, the opponent of Mr. Zelensky is using different dirty tricks on the media, on the internet, and only by that, Mikhail can say that Poroshenko is currently destabilized. He's not sure that he will win and so on. And currently, the company of Mr. Zelensky, they're sure that they will win and they believe in themselves.
And has that changed the messaging strategy for the Zelensky campaign?
Да, он принес коррективы.
So after the first round of the election, the message got improved and it got changed a bit. So the situation is the following. Mr. Zelensky is the first candidate ever for whom all regions of Ukraine voted almost equally, and he won in each region separately. And at this moment, his campaign also launched a video on YouTube asking people to unite. And only by the fact that in all regions, Mr. Zelensky won, it makes us understand that people already unite. And that's the main message.
So let's get into how the different social media platforms are used. I mean, you just mentioned a YouTube video, but what are the platforms that Mr. Zelensky is currently on, and which ones do you find useful and perhaps not so useful?
Да, смотрите, у Зеленского есть его личная страница,
So all the most popular social medias in Ukraine are used, including YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Telegram. And currently the Telegram is on the third number in the world among being the most used. And currently in this election, the young people voted the most. And this is a significant moment in the history as it has never happened before. I mean, such a huge amount of young people from Ukraine came to the election and voted. So that's why the Telegram is used a lot.
Very interesting. I want to ask more about Telegram in a second, but first, let's hone in on Facebook because it's the most popular platform in Ukraine. And I noticed that Mr. Zelensky has two pages. He's got like a personal page and then a public page. One of them has 500,000 followers. The other one only has 40,000. So I was wondering, why does Mr. Zelensky have two Facebook pages and are they used differently?
Ну, по сути,
So the verified personal account, it's managed personally by Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, and he personally makes all the posts, sends messages, and so on. And the second page, currently it has even more followers than Mr. Zelensky's page. It's about 500,000 as well. And what's important is the second page. It's devoted to his company, to people who support him, to people who work for him, for the PR agency, and so on. And by means of that other page, the company managed to gather 600,000 volunteers who volunteer for Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky. And even in terms of US, this number is really significant. Don't you think so?
Yeah, and what do these followers do? How do they work with the campaign?
Конечно, посты удаляются.
There are the key benefit in terms of the candidates. So these people, they help to spread the word about Mr. Vladimir Zelensky. Also, they print out the program of his, and they give it to people who don't have access to internet, for example, for elders, right? So they do everything that's necessary, everything that can be done, and also they have public initiatives. So basically, they just support their candidate and try to spread the word among the country.
And one more question on the 2 pages, which is we know that Facebook has made changes recently to demote the content or the organic reach from public pages. So I was wondering whether having 2 Facebook pages might be a way to somehow get more reach by using a personal page. Is that the case?
Есть, вот связывались со мной.
So as of the moment, the unverified group Team of Zelensky, it has more effect, even though it's not verified yet. And also, Mikhail already gave a comment for the New York Times. They asked him for his opinion on what's going on in the country. And after that, the Facebook, they contacted him immediately in like 6 hours or so and said that they can help with verifying the page, the Team of Zelensky. However, he replied to them and never heard from them ever since. However, the trademark Team of Zelensky is already registered. It's all official. However, still they can't verify their page. And at the same time, they get so many supporters. So the effect of this page is even bigger. The impact of it is bigger than of the verified page of Zelensky. And the personal page of his, it's used more in order to make some professional messages, some very official ones. He posts different photos there with other politicians, with friends, and so on. But the team of Zelensky is the group which makes change.
So one page functions more as like an organizing hub or group for volunteers, and the other one is used for personal and professional communication.
Yes, this is true.
Interesting. I want to focus on what you were saying about Facebook and your sort of contact with them and then them dropping off. Because I read there was a lot of fake news and trolling going on in this election. And I know you have reporters that are sort of organized to flag that content and report that to Facebook. But do you have a sort of special line with the company, or do you have a way to contact them in order to take down fake news or report trolls?
Да, просто у нас, если посмотреть...
So all in all, they don't have the support from Facebook at all. And they don't have a direct line. Even though the Facebook office from the Eastern Europe, basically the office which works with political matters, they contacted Mikhail and told him that they will help. He can hit them up as a direct line. However, they didn't reply afterwards, so they don't get any help. And for example, if they need to place ads, like do anything, they do it just like any other person. So no special capabilities.
Interesting, because I had been looking in the Facebook ad archive for ads that Zelensky was running, and I couldn't find any using different keywords in Russian and his name, just for one. But I could find a lot that the Poroshenko campaign had been running from their Facebook page. So are you running ads on Facebook is the first question. And the second is, do you think the Poroshenko campaign might have a sort of different relationship with Facebook?
Нет, команда Зеленского...
So currently, he doesn't know exactly what's going on with Poroshenko, if he has a direct line or more rights on Facebook. However, Mr. Zelensky has many more ads on Facebook, and they're used much more smart. So they use the target audience, and he says Zelensky has like 200% more ads than Poroshenko. However, still, they don't have a direct line. And for example, there are some breaches of copyright, of intellectual property rights violation for the TV programs of Mr. Zelensky, and nobody cares about it. So Facebook doesn't really help Mr. Zelensky at all.
I'm wondering why, when I was searching for the different pages of Zelensky, that the ads weren't showing up in the ad archive. Are they coming from the official page?
So he says that there is a special resource on Facebook where you can enter the name of the candidate, the Zelensky, and see all the ads that are present. And he said that they have about 900 or even 9,000 ads there. So
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. But yeah, Didn't find it. Let's move on to Telegram, which is kind of an interesting one. We haven't talked too much about it on the show. Can you tell us a bit about your Telegram account and how you're using it?
Да, ну, мы запустили его 1 января.
So they launched the Telegram channel on January 1st this year. And as of now, they have about 130,000 subscribers. And the dynamic is really great, even though it was pretty bad from 50 to 80,000. The dynamic was slow. And currently, everything is great. They get about 5 to 10,000 subscribers every day. And they hope to get about 160,000 subscribers by the end of the election. And at this point, right now, this is the third most popular Telegram channel in Ukraine, not only in the political sphere, but overall.
And I had read that the Telegram channel was used to organize supporters to report fake news and promote positive content about Mr. Zelensky. Is that the primary use for that channel?
Для этого мы создали отдельный проект, который называется...
So Telegram is not used for that cause. However, in order to fight the fakes and the trolls, they created a special project named Zelensky, which like the humans. And all the fake news, all the fake accounts are reported there. And this group consists of 3,000 people, every one of which is getting a notification from Facebook in case if they get any information about the fakes. And then they're getting a command to leave their comments on the resources where the fakes are rumbling. And that's how it works.
Uh-huh. It must have been Facebook Messenger that I had been reading about and not Telegram.
Yes.
But are you satisfied with the speed at which content is being taken down that you've been reporting as fake news?
Некоторые фейк-ньюс мы удаляем с YouTube, с выдачи.
So currently the situation is the following. For example, if there are fake news, fake videos, and trolls uploading their videos on YouTube, they can just remove those by claiming their right to the Zelensky trademark. However, if there are many comments of trolls and different fake accounts on different platforms, they just send people that support Zelensky and they just make many more comments. As a result, you just cannot see those trolls. Or sometimes new fake news, they just replace the old fake news, and that's how it works. And also, he wanted to add that the political campaign that's taking place nowadays is the dirtiest ever in Ukraine.
How so?
I mean, in terms of fake news, trolls, dirty tricks, in terms of IT, in these terms.
Uh-huh. That's what I wanted to ask about, because a lot of us think about fake news, on Facebook, but I have been reading that the Zelensky campaign had a number of setbacks where you've underwent a cyber attack, a DDoS attack, and also there were some issues with the YouTube channel taken down. So can you describe, what happened there and the kind of difficulties that your campaign's been facing?
Да, как только мы запустили сайт, была
So there was a cyber attack on the website just as soon as it was launched, and the guys were just not prepared for such a powerful cyber attack, the DDoS. However, in a few hours, the website was working again, and later on, this hasn't happened. However, speaking about the YouTube, Mikhail talked to the main manager of YouTube in Ukraine, and he said that it was a mistake. I mean, the blocking of the YouTube channel. So everything has been great from that time on.
Do you know if the Poroshenko campaign is having any issues with these websites being attacked or social media accounts being shut down?
Не слышал такого. Думаю, нет.
He thinks no, and he hasn't heard about it yet.
And why do you think that is, that the Zelensky campaign is having so many of these technical issues? Do you have any idea about the source or who's behind it?
Смотрите, я не верю там в заговоры.
So the main idea is the more you do, the more obstacles you face. And that's what's happening to the company of Mr. Zelensky now, because Mikhail doesn't believe in people who say that Instagram and YouTube are plotting something against Mr. Zelensky. He doesn't think it's real, but the company and people of Mr. Zelensky, they're just trying all the ways to make him popular and so on. So they just face some obstacles, but that's fine.
I was thinking more about the Russians than the other campaign, but can you ask about that?
Я думаю, нет, честно.
So Mikhail doesn't have any real facts that would support the talk that Russians are trying to break the internet in Ukraine or something like that. It doesn't really happen, he thinks. But we have lots of bots, like the fake accounts who post the commands, just, the copies of them. But overall, we don't really think that Russians have anything to do with it.
Okay. Couple more questions here. One is about Instagram, where I noticed Mr. Zelensky has 3.5 million followers, which is huge for Instagram. And I noticed that he also posts a lot of videos, and that's something that usually the image ratio is much higher, at least here in the West. So I wanted to ask, is that a preferred medium? And what's the idea behind using so many videos?
Да, очень хорошо растет Инстаграм.
So the Instagram is like the most popular social network now, and it's mostly used by young people, and that's what the target audience of the Zelensky company. And currently, his page is gaining about 15 to 20,000 subscribers per day. And just so that you knew, about 50% of voters under 29 years old voted for Mr. Zelensky. So Instagram is really growing now. Maybe soon it will be in the past, but currently it's a great platform. And about 5,000 people a day tag Mr. Zelensky. So
And tagging from the users themselves, what are they posting?
О, это классный вопрос.
So the tags that they're getting are from young people who are, for example, going to vote. So it's from the departments where the voting takes place. And for example, when people are moving somewhere, and in Ukraine, people need to get registered at their new place of living in order to have a right to vote. For example, if you're registered here, then you will need to vote somewhere close to your apartment. And so it's mostly about voting process. And yeah, and it's been great, and mostly young people take them.
Interesting. So when I was looking at the different social media accounts, I mean, the following is huge. 3.5 million on Instagram, 500,000 on Facebook. I mean, it's a lot, even by Western standards. So I wanted to ask, is Mr. Zelensky's profession as an actor, sort of maybe having built up a large social media following before the campaign, has that sort of helped with the size of your audience? And has it been a useful dynamic going into the political sphere?
Конечно, у Зеленского 110...
So it has a crucial role. So Mr. Zelensky has a great image, and for 20 years he's been on TV. And whenever some bad things are happening in Ukraine, for example, political ones, he was always making fun of it on TV, for example. So he has the 110% recognizability level in Ukraine. So everyone knows him here, and that's a great part of the political process now. And Mikhail also says that if it wasn't for Zelensky's efforts, then like he wouldn't be so big right now. It wouldn't be possible at all.
Yeah, because I was trying to watch a bit of the main show that he's in. We could kind of call it a comedy version of House of Cards, where Mr. Zelensky plays the president, but there's very much a human element to it, right? He makes mistakes. It's kind of funny. So I'm wondering if all these things kind of work together, like the Instagram videos, the large social media following beforehand, the show business. I mean, do all these things work together to sort of amplify a message of humanness or authenticity that really gets circulated through social media?
Ну, в принципе, он уже...
So you're right. This is a real human president, and it's not that the SMM company of Mikhail need to do a lot in order to help him out, because he's been showing off his life like all this time. For example, yesterday he was in a swimming pool. He's uploading video from the swimming pool. Next day he's in the gym. He's uploading it, and he's using simple words in his campaign. Whenever he's talking to people, he's just people understand him already. He doesn't need to pretend. And that's the best thing about him, because he made himself.
And so with a tech-savvy candidate, I think we could say showing all these live videos and using social media so skillfully, what's the role of paid advertising then, especially because that's your background in social media marketing?
Вот смотрите, мне только что на глаза попалась...
So the paid advertisements have a huge role in this process as well. And since March 18th, they have 970 advertisements placed. And it takes a huge role because Zelensky needs to be in eyes of all population. Everybody need to know that he's here, that he's about to become a president. And that's just something that they couldn't avoid, because their goal is to make Mr. Zelensky a president, and they do all the necessary things. apart from directories.
Is it just boosting, or is it different messages to different audiences?
Растет.
So the main role of the paid ads is to attract new people to support Mr. Zelensky. Or, for example, there are a lot of people who just haven't decided yet if they're going to vote or whom they will be voting for. So we need to make them vote for Mr. Zelensky. And that's the main purpose of it.
Two last questions for you. One has to do with the role of data and data analytics. Are you doing data analysis? Are you getting feedback from these paid advertisements in terms of A/B testing? I mean, what kind of data operation are you running?
У нас работает система мониторинга в режиме.
So first of all, they have a monitoring system which works online, and it helps them understand the amount of information posted about them online, like posts, like ads, and so on and so forth. And it helps them to work with audience to choose which messages people like, which they don't, and it helps them to define the target audience.
Now, my last question has to do with there's a big debate coming up on April 19th, just 2 days before the election. And I know there's a lot of public interest in it, but we know from the social media research that activity tends to spike around events, particularly around debate. So I'm wondering, is that something that the campaign is prioritizing? And if so, what type of strategy do you have going into sort of capitalizing on that media event?
Я скажу так, что мы...
So, first of all, they're trying to unite the people. It doesn't matter if it's the first or the second round of the election, they need to unite the people. And secondly, they are posting a lot of positive content online. They're just, trying to make people smile. And also, 24 hours ago, they launched a special widget, which anybody can add to their website. And actually, it's just a referring link to the website of Mr. Zelensky. And over 24 hours, 300,000 people visited their page with help of this widget.
Interesting. Well, I want to give a big thank you to Mikhail for coming on the show in the midst of the second round of a big presidential campaign. So thanks for taking the time out and coming on the podcast.
Да,
And thank you a lot.
I've just been speaking with Mikhail Fedorov, Chief Digital Strategist for Volodymyr Zelensky. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Social Media and Politics podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I've got a lot of great content coming your way, from top digital strategists in the US ahead of 2020 to some social media coordinators for some very interesting media organizations. So as I'm recording those, make sure you're following the Facebook page and the YouTube channel, which there's a link in the show notes, and check out some of the lectures I'll be doing over the next couple weeks. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, signing off from Copenhagen. See you next time.